our new series of intimate in-person trading conferences in some of the greatest cities in America. It's Market Rebellion Live. Next up, this June in Sonoma County, California. Savor some of the finest wines in America while you level up your trading with Pete Najarian, John Najarian, AJ Monty, Ryan Mastro, and Bill Johnson. Sonoma is limited to just 25 seats to ensure every guest gets personal attention, so act now. Tickets are going fast.
I'm not sure, Pete, if I just
for good. The clapper's gone for good, Jared. That's it. We don't see it anymore. He's lost. He's got 10 of them, and somehow he doesn't have one on him ever.
Yeah, you know what the problem is, Pete, is that Josh keeps using his.
Oh.
So they keep putting this thing in front of Josh going, Chicago, take one, click, like that. And I'm just like, poser, you stole it from us, you freaking poser.
I don't know what you're talking about. I was at Maryland for college, and I'll tell you.
when Terry Nover and I were over. Well, inside baseball, I guess, folks.
Yeah.
What you tuned in for was not inside baseball, but Rebel Edge.
That's right.
And we're going to give you the Rebels Edge. 1 minute macro, Jerome Powell tomorrow, Economic Club of Washington, D.C. You can only imagine how stuffy that place must be. But it will be much easier to tolerate because it's a little cooler in Washington than it is in the summer, which is, of course, why they take about a 90-day recess every summer. Next.
Well, I think you're right on that, John. I think that, we're still looking at the job numbers. We know what that means as far as the Fed. The Fed's like, hey, man, these things are lighting up like a daggone Christmas tree. I think we can keep on moving on. And so, people have just got to be embracing the realization of that. I think that's what we're seeing right now in the markets. We've seen a little bit of selling. We saw a lot of selling last week on Friday. I think you're seeing a little bit more today. And I think that's what's really influencing the markets, at least to the downside right now, because I can't find anything else that's pushing this sucker lower.
Yep. I would say it's nervousness over, okay, well, is he going to reiterate something? Because when he was speaking last week, Pete, the market was going like this. As soon as he stopped speaking, the market turned and went like that. All right. SoundHound, AI. I guess all you got to focus on, folks, is that last two letters, AI. Because SoundHound, what they do is they develop independent voice intelligence platforms. So all you got to do is put AI in there, Pete. It's kind of like when people just had to put .com in their handle, and all of a sudden it was, oh, this is something in the internet. This thing's up from $1 to $4 in basically 10 days, Pete.
Yeah. Unbelievable run, John. I think you're exactly right. Heck, you and I were at a Cal football game many, many years ago at this point in time when we were watching. And who were we watching with? A guy who called himself .com. So this AI is exactly the same thing playing out in front of us once again. And so just remember this. Remember how the .com thing sort of peaked up and then finished up. And I think AI right now is at the very, very early beginning stages. You and I have been talking about it for a while now, John. I think way in front of a lot of others. And now we're starting to see more and more start to move over in that direction. And I think with this SoundHound, 72 million shares, John, on a stock that normally trades 2 million. I think that is an amazing number. I mean, just absolutely crushing number. But why are they going there? A squeeze, whatever. But if you've got AI right now, people want it.
Yep, they do. And it's one of those, sort of magical things. And yes, they have squeezed a lot of those. And a lot of them, this is a $700 million stock. It's not, I've heard of SoundHound for a while, Pete.
Yeah.
But I never really thought it was worth $2, let alone $4. But that's where it got to today. So, go for it, folks. CTLT. So this one, Pete, is Catalent, and it's basically a contract drug maker. And allegedly, according to Bloomberg, it's a life science company getting bought by another life science company, Danaher. And if indeed that pulls off, well, it's going to be a lot higher. I'll point out that Danaher is not really trading down hard, though, Pete. So at least when you look and you see a situation where the one stock's up huge and the other is not getting killed, that's not so bad. That means the street likes it.
Yeah, it's interesting, John, because all you've got to do is look at the 52-week high and low, and you kind of look at it and say, well, it makes some sense that this thing's making the move to the upside. They're in a great spot, John. They really, truly are. I don't really love the balance sheet, but I understand it as well because of the manufacturing side of it. There's a lot of costs, so they've got a fair amount of debt sitting on those sheets. Does this fit in with Danaher? It sure could. It sure will, likely. And I don't see any reasons why there's much in the way of this from actually occurring, which is something you always have to think about is, will this whole thing actually get to the finish line? Will it be approved by everybody? I kind of think that it will. I think given the circumstances we're in right now, the partnerships that we're seeing out of Catalent is interesting. I think this is going to be something that really does build Danaher. And what you were saying about Danaher not getting hit too hard, I think that speaks volumes about exactly how well this really does fit in.
Yeah, I think, folks, what Pete and I try to impart to you from time to time, and hopefully every day, is what veteran traders look at when they're following something like this. And if a stock gets bought and it's up 25% and the takeover company is down 12, it might not even be up net.
Yeah.
But if the company taking the other one over is only down 2%, which is the case with Danaher today, Pete, that's why I'm saying a down 2% when you're putting this much on Catalent, that's a pretty good thing. Catalent's up 20%. So unless this was a 20-for-1 deal, I think you got a pretty good endorsement from the street.
Yeah.
All right. What about LSI, Pete? This is in the public storage space, and you and I have both tried to stay the hell away from putting our excess furniture into storage because you end up paying for it twice then, Pete. That's my feeling. I mean, I get it. If you're, temporary like you, that's when you use it. But if you move into a place that's not big enough and you put a bunch of your furniture in storage, you should have just sold it in the first place. But again, no one's probably looking to me for that advice. I'm just saying you're going to pay for it twice by the time you take that stuff out of that storage space. But Life Storage, $11 billion deal, getting bought, perhaps it looks like, by Public Storage, and Life Storage was making a big move on that.
Yeah. And John, this is something that's happened actually before. So this is like, well, rewind, because they attempted to make this type of acquisition once before. It didn't work out. Are they going to actually get this one, as we said before, down to the finish line? I don't know that they will, John. It's not that different of an offer. It's interesting. The one thing that I my big takeaway is this: when you look at these public storage type units that we're talking about here, and you've got obviously TV series and everything else, it shows what hoarders Americans truly are. I mean, the fact that we've got to have these big as hell houses, and then it's not enough. I got to go out and put my crap into this damn storage unit that's probably got bugs and mice and everything else running around in there. I'll tell you, John, it is amazing. And because I have experience now, because for the first time in my life, I actually use storage units. They were great. The people were great. I'll tell you what, there is something to it though, because it is such a simple build. And then you charge these, pretty decent amounts to have somebody put their stuff in there. And then people just forget about it. I mean, Storage Wars is that show because of the reason that we're such hoarders here in America that, you forgot you even have it. The hell with it. I'm not going to pay anymore. I don't care what's in there, whatever the case. But this is one, I don't think this goes across the finish line, John. I don't think these guys want to be acquired. They've already said no before. I think it's going to happen again.
Yep. And they went public with this one, folks, because like Pete said, they'd been approached before, but the most recent approach was privately.
Mhm.
And apparently they didn't get the answer they wanted, so they're going to go public with it.
Yeah.
It's another situation, though, that if they can pull it off, like Pete said, the one is virtually flat. PSA is flat, and
Mhm.
the other, LSI, is up 12% on good, heavy volume.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive in, Pete, to the first of our unusual activities, shall we? Thought this one was interesting because, we've got AI. You just mentioned it, AI. I had to pick this one, Pete, because 7,000 of the right at the money, February 30 calls were what they were buying. And they chased them up big, Pete. And whenever you and I used to see that on the trading floor, we'd say, they were paying $1.90, then they were paying $2, then they were paying $3, then they were paying $4. They paid all the way to $5.50 for these calls. That's how bad they wanted them and how bad the crowds collectively stuck it to them. What do you think of this one, Pete?
Yeah, it's an extension, John, of what we're talking about right out of the gate today with the AI. And by the way, I'll just address one thing. You skipped over Children's Place. I'll just say this.
Oh yeah, shoot, I
no,
did.
no. This is all part of it. It's all good. We can do this in just very, very quickly. So why was the stock down to 40 and why is it back up to 44? John, the biggest problem they faced was input costs, and that all really goes back to cotton. Cotton prices have come back 40%. Because of that, Children's Place started to kind of, when people started to actually listen to the CEO and that presentation, they started to figure out maybe things aren't as bad. Maybe it's not going to continue to be as bad because those earnings numbers were actually pretty awful that they put up there, but it could be just a one and done for them. I think that was the interpretation. John, I've got an AI for you as well, BBAI, which is Big Bear Holdings. Now, what's interesting about Big Bear, which I dig this one. I'll tell you what, this is fantastic. But here's the beauty of this company. So it's your typical AI. Everybody always talks about it, that, machine learning, all of those kinds of things, and what they do. The range of this stock, John, is incredible. 60 cents to 16 bucks. Well, it isn't there right now, but I can tell you this, what's really interesting. On the 31st of January, we had a buyer of Feb 5 calls. Stock was trading 435. A big buyer. Stock started to move up. It got up to almost $5. On February 3rd, they bought the Feb 7.5 calls. Today, again, the February 7.5 calls getting bought. Almost 12,000 of those, John, between 45 cents all the way up to about 80 cents on those options. The stock at the time of this was right around $6. So it's been on the move. We talked about AI at the very top. We talked about it again. You just had it for unusual, and here I am with this unusual. I'm in this one. I think there's a possibility, John, that we see some of these AI names really, really take off. So I think it could be pretty interesting to watch how this whole thing plays out. But the amount of option activity that we are seeing across the board in this space gets a little bit bigger each and every day.
Yep. And I've got a surprise pick, Pete, that I'll give you tomorrow.
Nope.
That plays right into the AI craze. And
that's a tease.
and I really like this one because we've also got unusual activity on it today. But I didn't want to pick that one today, Pete, because I wanted to save it. And so I'll give you that one tomorrow, folks.
Sure.
All right, let's dive into some sports, Pete. We're in the final home stretch of the Super Bowl. You got anything good to say about the NFL and Roger Goodell?
No. And I'm not trying to pick on the guy, John, but as I got the shield on right now. The shield gets tarnished a little bit more and a little bit more all the time. And we talked about it earlier when we said, hey, look, you got a 53-man roster. Why does that mean you can only suit up 47? You're paying all 53 to be players, but you have those guys inactive. Why? I have no idea why. Just activate all 53, but have 3 quarterbacks. Now, we already talked about this, but this goes back to the 49ers game, but that wasn't the only game. It's happened before. That's why I'm saying mandate 3 quarterbacks this year in the offseason, Roger. Figure it out, man. You guys are making money hand over fist, and yet, because of your greed and the greed of some of the owners, You don't want to do this. You need to do this. You have to do it. It'll make the game better and it'll take some of the tarnish off. But on top of that, John, the Pro Bowl. Are you crapping me? I mean, is this the most awful thing they've ever decided to do over the years? Now, this didn't just happen this year. It's been going down, 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 down. And in my opinion, the reason it started to go down, John, they used to always be in Honolulu. That's cool.
Yep.
Everybody wants to see the Hawaiian Islands, right? It's a great spot. We see all the wonderful things that are going on over there. The players are doing this and that. And by the way, they actually had a football game called the Pro Bowl. Not anymore. Now they play a bunch of grab ass games, or maybe you call it, flag football, whatever you want to call it. It's terrible. No one gives a crap about it. You've got all of these other things. I'll give you one number, John, and I'll let you decide what you think.
Okay.
The Pro Bowl skills competition. Now, from the greed factor, I guess you could still say, you know what? We got them. They had 1 million people watching. Now, that sounds like a great number. And for anything else in the world, that is a great number. But the NFL, they averaged 17 million people per game viewing the games. As a matter of fact, in the playoffs, John, the Bengals Chiefs, 50 million, and actually went over 60 million at points in the game to be able to watch that one. The Niners and the Eagles, 52 million people were watching that game. And here you got 1 million people watching the greatest Pro Bowlers, which doesn't include Super Bowl guys, which is insane as well. They used to always do it a week after the Super Bowl. They haven't figured out that might be a smarter way to do it as well. That way you get Pat Mahomes in the game, John, and some of the other guys that everybody wants to see. How do they fix this? Because this thing is broken and it's awful. And I'm not the only guy. I know you hate it too, but how do they fix it? What should Goodell do?
Well, I think it's all about the injuries, Pete, and the players don't want to be out there, hurting themselves. But there are an awful lot of players who would basically give a very valuable piece of their anatomy to be in that game. And I would say that once you have the fan vote in for who's going to be all pro, fine, let them vote for that. But then anybody who's not on that list can put their name in for the Pro Bowl, and then let an AFC coach and an NFC coach pick a team, a representative team that they think can go out there and win and make it worth their while. Put, 50,000, 100,000 or whatever, close to Super Bowl money for the winner and so forth. And I think you'd have a real game again. And I remember when some of those games, Pete, because they don't really play a lot of defense, they couldn't blitz certain guys and all that. Okay, fine. But you'd still get 55 to 57, and people get to see real skilled players that are still at that high level before the USFL gets on there and makes everybody say, God, is that football?
Hey, wait a minute.
The USFL is better than flag football.
Oh, God, yes. XFL, USFL, you name your FL, and they are better than this crap that they're throwing out there. I love Peyton and Eli, but wow, John, they're way overdone media-wise. I mean, they're way too involved. We're seeing way too much of that. It's all, it's turned into a comedy routine, which is fine when they do it on Monday Night Football. Hey, I think it's classic. I think those guys are clever. I think they're funny. But you know what? They're still supposed to be playing football. They're not. They're still supposed to be doing all this other stuff. They're not. It's just not the same ever since it started when they left Hawaii. I'm telling you right now. So the second one I've got for you, John, is this. Aaron Rodgers. Now, I think the guy gave us a little bit of a tip of the cap and gave us a little bit of a tip of where he might be going after he finished yesterday. Now, he was at an event playing golf, and I'll tell you, Pebble Beach, the Pro-Am, he's a pretty damn good golfer, John. I think he played better than the guy from the tour that he was playing with. I mean, these guys are unbelievable. Aaron had a couple of shots. He had one on a par 3, John. He nailed it. The damn thing almost went, well, it didn't almost go in, but it wasn't that far away from the hole either. I mean, the guy really is amazing. But afterwards, after they won, he was all excited and he was getting interviewed and they were talking about things. And he says, well, I'm not going to give you too many hints, but a lot of people are talking about the Raiders. And I know my receiver, Devontae, sure does miss me. So I'll just say that. And that's a little bit of a hint, maybe. I mean, it doesn't mean he's going there and all the rest of that. But what do you think, John? I mean, where is the landing spot? They are in a great position to trade for Aaron because they lost a big money quarterback that they gave up on. And this opens that up. Maybe you give a first rounder to Green Bay. Green Bay, you know, all you got to do is go back and look at what happened with Favre when he went to the Jets, to our buddy who's the GM out there, and what they had to give up. I think that might not, I think it's a pretty easy thing to work out to get Aaron somewhere, but maybe right there with the Raiders, John.
Yeah. And I'll make a bold prediction, Pete, that Aaron's got enough money that if indeed they don't put him somewhere where he wants to go, he won't play in Green Bay again. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. If they can't trade him and get him to a place where he wants to go, like the Raiders, I think he'll just say, well, I guess that's it, because he's not going to go out there with a bunch of bumbles like he played with this year.
Yeah, they've never helped him, John. That's the one thing. Everybody goes back and says, well, he only went to one Super Bowl. I was listening to Stephen A. He only went to one Super Bowl. Little bit, you know, he went through his whole routine, right? Well, the reality is they've never given him help. I mean, at least Tom Brady got some help, John. They had some good players on defense. They had some really good running backs that they would just rotate different people every year, but they always tried to have a running back there. Obviously, he had the tight ends forever up there with Gronk and others. So, you know, they gave Tom some of the tools that you need. They gave him Randy Moss. They did a lot of different things over the years that they haven't done for Aaron Rodgers, and it's really kind of sad. So here's one reason, John, that you might say, well, the Raiders do kind of work out. They had 9 games this year where they lost by 1 score. So that's the positive. Here's the negative. They had 6 wins on the year. 2 were Denver. We know what horse crap those guys were. And 1 was the Texans, another piece of crap. So let's be honest. They need a lot, and they probably need something on defense. But if you're going to trade and get him from Green Bay, you're going to have to give him probably your first rounder this year and maybe a defensive player, which I think Green Bay could use somebody at almost every position, John. They had a decent record, but if it wasn't for Aaron, they would not have won nearly the games that they did.
Yeah, true. Well, maybe we fixed the Pro Bowl, Pete. Maybe we gave Green Bay some ideas. Folks, remember, you can join us Monday through Thursday for the Rebel Edge. We'll be back tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And I'm going to head right over now, Pete, for a little hit with our friend Charles Payne, CVP, over on the Fox Business Channel at about 2:15 p.m. So tune into that too. And we'll see you tomorrow at 1 here on Market Rebellion Television.